Hi and welcome. My name is Michael Halberstadt. This is the second in a series of interviews and recordings I've been working on with my dad, Hans Halberstadt. I'm working on photographic related podcasts right now, and this is my dad talking about his experiences in Vietnam in regards to photography.
I'm Hans Halberstadt. Today is December 7th, 2024. December 7th being a day that will live in infamy as Pearl Harbor Day, a big deal when I was a kid. So, you want me to talk about specifically about my first photography, and that was in 1962 when I was 18 in Vietnam. So, a little background, and that is that I grew up in a commercial, big time advertising photography studio operated by my father, M. Halberstadt, who was a big deal at the time in food photography and had a big studio. And I started working in it when I was 12, um, in a extremely nominal fashion of picking up uh, towels in the dark room and sweeping the floor not very well and making bad coffee and standing around a lot, not really knowing what to do. Um, he made big, expensive photographs for big, expensive clients, and the environment during the production of photographs, the studio was a big, expensive operation, and the tension level in the place was right off the scale. My father was not a calm, friendly sort of person, and there was a lot of yelling. I've been told, but I don't know for a fact, that he went through three assistants in one day, hiring one and firing him, hiring another and firing that one, and then hiring a third and possibly firing the third. So anyway, it was not a happy sort of environment. Although the photographs made were very pretty, and at the time, everybody in the United States would see them when they went to the supermarket or picked up a magazine. So I started working in there at the age of 12, and at the age of about 13 or 14, I swore to myself that I would never, ever be a photographer. I really didn't want to be in that sort of environment. And in fact, my father, your grandfather, did absolutely nothing to promote the idea that I or my brothers would become photographers. He did say at one point that we could take over the studio if we wanted, but he also said at another point that he would never teach me how to make a photograph or how to use a camera. So if I wanted to be a photographer of any kind or use a camera, I could figure it out myself. He wasn't going to help me. So, so that attitude, along with the tension in the process of making photographs, completely turned me off the idea of being a photographer, and I had other ideas about what I wanted to do. Nonetheless, at age 18, as soon as I turned 18 and could do so without my parents' permission, I joined the Army, the best decision I ever made, and um, was sent to Vietnam about 6 months later as a helicopter door gunner. And um, although my father was not any sort of mentor as far as photography goes, just by hanging around him, I had the opportunity to see world class photographs being made and to meet world class photographers. Ansel Adams being the first, and then Dorothea Lange, Imogen Cunningham, William Garnett. And so by the age of 18, I'd seen a lot of Dorothea Lange's documentary work, and had become friendly with Bill Garnett. Got to see an awful lot of Ansel's photography, much of it you've never seen. The secret non-landscape photography that he did to pay the rent. So at any rate, I'm 18 and a half and I'm going to Vietnam, and my father had a twin lens Rolleiflex, and he loaned it to me, and it came with two bricks of film, a brick being a term you might know, 20 rolls of film in a package. So there are 20 rolls of black and white film and 20 rolls of color film, and a camera that I had never used and had no idea how it worked. So I got to Vietnam with this film and this camera, and I started having big time adventures. Hard to avoid when you're a helicopter door gunner in a shooting war. And I figured out how to load the film, and every roll of film came with a little piece of paper inside the box that had settings appropriate for different light conditions: bright sun, open shade, overcast day, that sort of thing. And almost everything that I was seeing was bright sun, and so that was f8 and probably 1/25th or 250th of a second. And learning how to focus was pretty easy, especially since almost everything that I was photographing was infinity focus. Not all, especially after I'd been there a while. So anyway, I started carrying this thing with me on missions, and it had a neck strap, so I just put it around my neck, and I could just look down into the viewfinder and get an idea of what the camera was pointed at, and since everything was preset, all I had to do was push the button, and Kodak would do the rest. So I started doing that, and looking back on this, 60 years ago now, 62 actually, I really like these photographs, and I've tried to figure out why my very first untrained photographs, inexperienced photographs, hold up technically and aesthetically for me. I like them a lot better than much of the work that I've done since. I think part of it was just the environment. The old saying of F8 and be there is really true, and I was definitely there. And one thing that my father, your grandfather, said to me before I left, the only mentoring he ever actually did, was he said, photograph what you're seeing. So what I was seeing was, among other things, dead bodies. I probably photographed a lot more dead bodies than you have. And people about to die, and bloodshed. I was a very mild-mannered, meek kind of kid at the time, but I was also kind of brave in some ways, and artistic ways, and so I photographed people in this combat environment in a way that I've never seen anybody else do, and so some of the photographs in my portfolio show Vietnamese soldiers going into battle. One of which is a stick being a term for a group of soldiers who are like a squad about to get on my helicopter. These are Vietnamese Rangers and very experienced, and one of the guys in this squad turned and saw me, and he looked over at the camera with a big smile. And, it's a kind of a interesting portrait. And another photograph that I made was, actually, I can tell you the date. It was the 22nd of December 1962, and the photograph was made at a place called Tuy Hoa, a big flat plain along the coast of Vietnam. And the photograph is the left side of the cockpit of a helicopter in which a pilot has just been killed. A guy named Holloway took a bullet right in the head, and it was his first combat mission too. So anyway, he kind of fell over onto the right, and he bled out into the cockpit. And I made a photograph of the cockpit with all his blood dripping down onto the landing gear. I was apprehensive when I was doing this that somebody might object to my making a photograph of this gore, but nobody said anything. And it, as a photograph out of context, if you don't know that this is some place where somebody has just been killed, it's not an Ansel Adams photograph exactly. But I'm still quite proud of it, and I still think it was a brave thing to photograph. All of the photographs from that era that I'm happy with, and many of the ones later, before the digital age, are all 2 1/4 format. There's just such a difference in resolution between a 35 millimeter image and a 2 1/4 image. It just really seems to make a huge difference to me, to the visual success of an image. So at any rate, so I've photographed live Vietnamese soldiers and dead Vietnamese soldiers, and it was a weird time in the war, and there was a heavy French influence at the time. There's still a lot of French colonial people in Vietnam at the time, and it was very early in American involvement. So anyway, things were kind of weird, and two of the photographs that I still like as documentary Dorothea Lange kinds of photographs from that era are of an officer who came to pick up dead bodies at a place called Bami Thuot. Bami Thuot is up in the mountains, in the jungles. It's was a wonderful town, and this lieutenant, a second lieutenant, a very extremely junior officer, showed up, and his uniform was just perfect, and his brass belt buckle was perfectly shined, and his haircut was perfectly short, and he's wearing gloves when he didn't need to be wearing gloves, and he just looked so out of place. I mean, we're in combat. Uh, we're um, we're not in the United States. We're in a combat zone, and we didn't polish our belt buckles all every day, the way this guy seems to. So at any rate, I made two photographs of this guy. One where he's kind of standing there, not really knowing what's going on or what to do, and then another photograph where he's looking at one of the dead bodies, um, as if he doesn't really know what it is. It's all wrapped up in a poncho and on a stretcher, and maybe he had some duty to perform to come and collect these dead bodies. But at any rate, he's looking at one of them like, oh, what am I going to do with this? So at any rate, the photographs that I made when I was 18, before I knew how to use a light meter, were really Dorothea Lange kinds of photographs. Um, I had met and become acquainted with Dorothea Lange and her husband Paul Taylor because they were friends of my parents, and we went to visit them over in Berkeley, and I got to see Dory. I only knew her as Dory until after she died, when I learned that her real name was Dorothea. So at any rate, um, having seen her photographs influenced my photographs. And um, so I've really noticed a big difference between my black and white photographs and my color photographs. There's something stronger about the black and whites than the color for the most part. And of the 10 or so images in my portfolio from that period, only one is color, and that is a kind of a group portrait of the Vietnamese Rangers waiting to get on my helicopter. Um, um, my my favorite photograph from that era is um, of another helicopter with Vietnamese troops who've just gotten out of it and are running to get out of the danger zone. Um, so we were under fire. Um, there was a bullet hole in my helicopter when we got back. Um, I really think it is the perfect portrait of the kind of things that we were doing at the time that we were doing them. The war ended up going off in different directions, but um, anyway, so aftermath on that. Um, I like my photography better than anybody else likes my photography. I don't think my father ever said a kind word about any of these photographs or anything I did afterwards. And I was not dependent on him for his approval to think that they were good photographs. I was um, I was pretty confident, in fact, about these photographs. Um, and I still am. I think they're as good as anybody else's Vietnam photographs. I've never seen anything. I've seen many Vietnam photographs that are what I would consider as good. I can't think of any that are better. Um, So, at any rate, when I got back from Vietnam and got out of the Army in 1965, I still had absolutely no intentions of ever being a professional photographer, trying to make money at it. And I did my best to stay out of professional photography, um, but God seems to have had other plans for me, and I've accidentally been forced to be a photographer during my adult life. Um, I tried hard not to, didn't work. So I'd say the most interesting thing to me about my Vietnam photography is how little interest it has ever received from anybody else. I'm familiar with all the rest of the photography of the war, and I really think that it's an extremely good Dorothea Lange kind of documentary coverage, and I recognize that nobody else thinks it's important, and so anyway, that's it's a sort of a whimsy to me uh, to be able to say I really like my Vietnam War photography better than anybody else. I never have received any praise, any serious interest in it. I guess this is a good time though to and Michael, you don't need to use this in this particular episode if you don't want to, but since I haven't taken the normal route of people who want to be photographers and want to be known as photographers, I've only really entered in one contest in my entire life, and that was after I got out of the Army, and some of these photographs were were part of that entry. And it was a small photo contest at San Francisco State, and I'd never entered a photograph in a competition, but there was a competition, and I was living in the dorms, and I decided that I would take some of the matted prints. I think most of them were of these Vietnam photographs. So I I took them to the entrance table where I showed them to the girl who was receiving entries, and I asked her if which one I should enter, and she said, "Oh, this one and that one and the other one," and so I ended up entering, I don't know, four or five, and didn't really think anything of it because I didn't expect to win anything. So after the judging was complete, I went to look at the exhibition, and I had won first prize, second prize, third prize, honorable mention. I won a clean sweep of the photography division, and I won the big prize was that I won a pretty girl, and that was Joyce Ann Branson, the girl that took the was accepting the entries, and she and I became friendly and ultimately married and generated two kids, one of whom is you.
Well, that's a good story, and did not know that aspect of our family history. I
Really?
didn't know that you would.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I love this story. Yeah, that's how I met your mom.
It's possible you told me that too. I don't remember it. But that's sweet.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's today's story. That's Vietnam.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned and come on back for more in this series. I'll be interviewing my dad again for sure. And he's got some interesting stories from his childhood up until present day. Also, if you come and check out the website, there's a lot to see there. I have a bunch of how-to videos. There's a lot of sort of just slapstick humor. And there's downloadable ephemera, like brochures and such from the film days. And in reference to something my dad was talking about, there was also, he mentioned film inserts and the Sunny 16 rule. There are a few of those available for download, and I plan on making more available as well. All right, well, hope you tune in again. Thank you very much.